Become a loose acquaintance with the idea of being an imposter, popping in every now and then for a quick catch-up to draw motivation and inspiration, then saying bye to them for as long as you can. If it's your first time here, my name is Jack Wang. I'm a scientist and professor from Australia. January is focused on fresh starts on the channel, and this is another entry in our Tips Digest series, this time on the imposter syndrome, specifically how to manage it when you are looking for your first job after graduation, using a 3-step uncertainty framework. In many ways, I am the embodiment of the imposter syndrome. I have multiple degrees in science, information technology, and teaching, did a PhD, worked in academia for over 10 years, and in 2020, I was named the Australian University Teacher of the Year. This should be an unimpeachable resume in many ways, but I have felt and been an imposter every step of the way. I don't view this as a bad thing at all, and long story short, I now know I'm doing the right kind of work and asking the right questions when those feelings of insecurity start creeping back in. Now, anxiety and depression are serious issues that need proper medical treatment, something I'm clearly not qualified to give as a mere microbiologist, but as of 2023, the imposter syndrome is pretty loosely defined, clinically speaking. There are a range of surveys used to measure self-esteem, confidence, and burnout, but no gold standard on the diagnostic front. Because of this, there's not much evidence on the effectiveness of any treatment strategy either. We're talking about the imposter syndrome today when you graduate and find your first job, but what about when you're still studying as a student? Let's acknowledge that students, undergraduate students in particular, to university are vulnerable to feelings of inadequacy and anxiety as well, probably more than anyone. The difference though is that most students haven't yet accomplished that much because you're just getting started. Outside of family or peer pressure, people shouldn't have that many expectations of you while you're studying. In fact, you have the opposite problem. No one thinks you have any value, and if I had $1 every time I hear people complain about students and millennials on their phones eating avocado on toast. I don't want to minimize your sense of insecurity as an undergraduate student, but it is quite distinct from the imposter syndrome. Now, there are studies on the imposter syndrome amongst students, but the most cited studies seem to focus on medical students. A study in 2016 looked at over 2,500 medical students, and as you might suspect, imposter syndrome, exhaustion, cynicism, depersonalization, all elements of burnout lit up across the board for these medical students. I don't think this is necessarily a universal experience for all students because yes, medical students are a special type of demographic, high achieving, self-motivated, usually a little bit older, onto their second or third qualification before they're in med school. This seems to more closely mirror the imposter experience or syndrome of graduates out of their first degree rather than first year university or college students feeling out of place amongst their relatively young peers. If you fall into the latter category, it's best to directly address the underlying causes of anxiety or depression, ideally with a mental health professional, rather than come up with a professional development strategy like the one I'm about to discuss. Phase 1, rookie jitters, after you find your first job. As an undergraduate student, your problems are mostly your own to deal with. If you do well, you are the one rewarded. If you struggle, you suffer the most negative consequences out of anyone. That dynamic shifts when you join a new team, business, or company in a new job because your failures start to affect those around you. Peers, your manager, your company's bottom line. So the pressure mounts very quickly. Everyone else seems like they know so much more than you, but it's only because they've had time to figure things out on their own. Hopefully there's a grace period. You're the newbie, so someone should be there to make sure you know how to set things up first time around the right way, if you're lucky. But what happens when this grace period runs out? For me, this was the first year of my PhD. People were definitely around to make sure I knew how to update the right spreadsheets, be part of cleanup rosters, not drink any dangerous chemicals or break really expensive machinery or equipment. After that, I needed to figure the rest out by myself. To reinvent yourself at this stage, from brand new rookie to valued member of the team, you will need to walk through a 3-stage uncertainty framework. 1, the Googleables. 2, the Mentionables. And 3, the Untouchables. The Googleables is self-explanatory. It's things you can find out by yourself in your own time on Google. Well, not just Google, but Wikipedia or Reddit, discussion forums, YouTube videos, news articles, academic literature. The longer you spend on this stage and the wider the net you cast, the easier the next 2 stages will be. Most of the people who hit the ground running in their first job already do this. They've done a ton of background research by themselves in their own time. This is easier said than done though, because how do you know the right questions to ask when you're a newbie or the right search terms. This won't be a one and done situation. You'll need to revisit the stage over and over again as you're given new duties and responsibilities to manage over time. 2. The mentionables, questions that you can't find the answers to independently, but feel comfortable enough mentioning casually over, say, a coffee with your fellow team members or colleagues. Hey, why are we working with this client? They seem very demanding. Oh, it's because they bring in so much money for the firm. Got it. Hey, why is it so hard to book this piece of equipment? Oh, it's several $100,000 and we have to share this with 5 other research groups. So make sure it's always clean and in working order once you're finished. Okay, got it. Hey, what's a good time to go on leave that doesn't make everyone else's job twice as hard? This is also how you build a professional network, slowly but surely building people's trust. And the quicker you understand the social norms and the unwritten rules of etiquette in your workplace, the quicker you will shed your rookie or imposter status. None of the 3 steps to this uncertainty framework are easy to execute, especially if you don't have a good foundation of professionalism. For many of you, it's your first full-time job after graduating, and we've all spent the last few years stuck at home in isolation, so it's not your fault. In the last few years, I've interviewed a lot of students who seem great on paper, terrific grades, lots of different study and work experiences, but when I meet them in person, they're underwhelming because they just don't know how to respond in different social scenarios. If you're getting interviewed for jobs, but always coming in second or third, that's a sign your resume or CV is just fine, but something's off with how you present yourself in person. I can't predict the exact culture or customs of your workplace, city, or country, but I'll try to be the one to say the quiet part out aloud for you. Be energetic. Come into work alert, eager to listen, and ask follow-up questions when appropriate. If you're tired at work and it's very obvious something in your private life needs to go or be fixed. Be positive. Don't build a reputation of being a complainer or, if you're from Australia, a whinger, even when making small talk that's not work-related. Don't talk about problems, but think about solutions you can bring to the table as opposed to reasons something can't be done or can't be fixed. Be curious, but not pushy. Sure, you'll have a lot of questions, especially when following stage 2 of the framework, the mentionables, but shouldn't you be figuring things out on your own by now? That'll be the subtext of any professional interactions you may have after a certain period of time with anyone, even the most friendly of supervisors. It could be weeks or months if you're lucky, but if that's the case, it probably means you didn't spend enough time on stage 1, the Googleables, doing your own background research to seem like you know what you're doing. Fake it until you make it. Be respectful of boundaries. If you do need to ask someone questions, try to schedule a regular catch-up as opposed to firing random questions at them all day long or every time they're on their lunch break. Also, avoid commenting on other people's appearance, haircuts, clothing. Oh, you look really tired today. It doesn't matter their age or gender. You never know what other people's triggers or sensitivities may be in the modern workplace. Unless you're really confident in your charisma, odds are you're making them feel a little bit uncomfortable. Be self-aware. This is really the hardest part of all of this, but try to ready yourself and ask one of your friends for some honest feedback. Is there anything I do that makes you feel uncomfortable? Am I bad at reading social cues? Do you feel at ease talking to me about your problems? This feedback is only helpful if it's coming from the right person. If it's your parents or siblings, too much history and potential for family drama. It probably can't be anyone in your current workplace either, but it could be someone you used to work with, if not a friend you regularly keep in touch with now. They're clearly still hanging out with you for a reason, so hopefully they'll give you some positive and constructive insight. 3. The Untouchables. Untouchable questions that only the head honcho, your manager, or your boss's boss should really be able to answer. What's the direction of this company? How does the work we're doing today affect your vision for the next 5, 10, 20 years? How's the work we're doing different than our competitors? And how do you see my role changing over time? Do I have room to grow in this area? Now, these are called the Untouchables for a reason because no one really expects the rookie to be asking the manager hard-hitting questions. But these are things you should have in the back of your mind. If you're ever in a situation where you've done an incredible job, landed a big client or finished a big project, published a big paper, you might want to cash in a little bit of your career capital, the trust that your manager now has in you, to ask one of these questions. If you're interested in developing a well-rounded transferable skill set, considering subscribing to the channel or watching the full long-form video on the imposter syndrome here. Thanks for watching. I'm Jack Wayne, and in the next video, let's deep dive into the next career phase. After you've settled in your job for a few months, in phase 2, out of the box.